See if that works. I just enabled show mouse cursor, and it wasn't showing mouse cursor before. We'll see if it's showing it now. So, do you have a snuck? Do you have a snuck? Do you have a snuck? So this guy's random, and so you're going to open with 13 gas just in case he's Protoss. And it looks like when you saw that he was Terran, you threw down that second depot, and you're going to pull dudes off gas, so you can get a fast expansion, but then you forget to pull dudes off gas, so I guess you're going to get a fast expansion with 200 gas saved up, which is kind of silly. But you told me to ignore basically the first 13 minutes of this game, because him being random threw you off, and that's kind of funny. So you end up with tons of gas and one marine, one factory, $350 spent on pure marine, plus the bunker gives you a reasonable amount of army, but I would guess at 7 minutes you're going to have nothing. Yeah, at 7 minutes you got nothing. Luckily, your opponent fast expanded and went infantry with no factory and a ridiculously early turret ring, and no workers. You're 10 workers ahead. You're basically just dominating him on income. So while your army is teeny tiny itsy bitsy, it doesn't matter because he's not going to attack you, and your income is way bigger than his. So by the time the game actually starts at like 12 or 15 minutes, you're going to be way ahead. And that is our goal, man. By keeping 3 SCVs queued up all game, it's guaranteed that any game that goes longer than 12 minutes, we're going to be way ahead in. This doesn't have... There we go. That's one of the consistent themes that we got for you, is that you like to make refineries and then not put guys on them until super late. That's okay. 2 idle SCVs, not making depots. You're going to block again. Everything is looking good so far. You're okay. So we've said a bunch of times that one of your biggest problems is this. You end up with a bunch of money that you just can't spend because you don't make enough buildings. And you realized, well, my money is stacking up, I need to make additional buildings, and so you made 2 racks. 2 is not enough. 2 is not enough, buddy. 2 is not enough. So there should be certain time periods in your mind where you're going to reevaluate your macro and make sure that you have enough buildings. The first should be 12 minutes, because like I said, usually at 12 minutes you have 2 base full saturation, and that's true in this case. You've got 62 workers and $2,000 a minute, $2,200 a minute of income, plus more when you drop extra mules and whatever. So what do you need to spend $2,200 of income in cases where you don't need depots because you just fought a big battle and lost all your dudes and now you don't need depots? We got 2,200 divided by 250. You need 8 buildings. 8 buildings. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got 6 buildings. And this one's a half building. This one's a half building. This one's a half building. And this one's a not really counting building. So essentially you have 1, 2, 3.5 buildings when you want 8. And that's why your money is stacking up. You got 3.5 buildings, you wanted 8. This bad, man. This bad. And this is really important because most games are going to come to a head at 8 minutes if one guy is one basing. If both guys fast expanded, most games are going to come to a head at 12 minutes. And if you're stuck on 3.5 buildings at 12 minutes, then there's no way for you to compete. If he just attacks you with his army, even if you have similar sized armies, his reinforcements are going to overwhelm you, because after you guys trade armies, neither of you needs SCVs and neither of you needs depots anymore. So suddenly you're going to have this huge income, and you're going to be completely unable to spend it. I like that you got 16 workers up here, and then you double rallied to the low ground. That's what I do too, and it works out really well, because then your main doesn't mine out super quick. Usually if you equally saturate both of these bases, then your main's going to mine out at 15 minutes. It's going to start to mine out at 15 minutes. But if you do it like this, and you drop all your mules on the low ground, your main doesn't mine out until a lot later. The problem is, look at this. You've got enough to fully saturate 3 bases right now, and you're only on 2. You've got 72 workers. That's all the workers you want to make for the whole game. And your third is just really late. I would like to see you take a third much earlier, in TvT especially, because in TvT, there's no way to kill each other as long as each side has a certain number of siege tanks. I also like how in the past you've been trying to emulate my style of TvT, where you go for just tons of Marines and tons of medevacs. And in this game, you're doing a much more siege tank centric style, where you've emphasized making sure siege tanks keep coming out of this factory. Again, not enough buildings, so you have units queued up everywhere. But that's that's because you don't have enough buildings. So I do like the heavier siege tank style for you. I think it fits your play style a lot better. So you've got a bigger army than him, a bigger income than him. You just secured your third. You've got a reasonable number of dudes here, a reasonable number of dudes here. Your main has not mined out even though you're 16 minutes in, because you've kept it relatively undersaturated all game, and I'm okay with that. I like that. That's what I do as well. You're going to need to get a fourth pretty soon, and we're going to have our first big fight now because you're at 200 unit space. If we don't have your first big fight at 180 unit space, you're going to be really sad. So if you're falling into the passivity fail thing that I used to talk about in TVP and TVZ. It's not so much of an issue in TVT because if you have enough siege tanks, even if the game can't really end because of it, but you always end up in the late game if you do this. So right now, you have enough money to have been at 200 unit space probably right now. Right? So if you add an additional 24 Marines, then you would be at 170. So now. So at 1430, you have enough money to be at 200 unit space. And that means that before 1440, you need to have fought, because you're ahead, and you got to use that aheadness. Actually, you're kind of even at this point. So because you're keeping so much money in the bank, which is a side effect of not having enough buildings. Actually, you still don't have enough buildings. Once you saturate this third, your income is no longer 2,200. Now your income is going to be 2,800. Look at this, 2950. 2950 divided by 250 is 11. So now you need 12 buildings just to spend your money. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, this is a half building. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 4.5 buildings with a fifth on the way. Come on. You need 12.5 buildings. You've got 4.5. It's ridiculous. And this becomes a lot more obvious once you actually stop building the depots and you actually stop making the turrets and you actually stop upgrading and you actually stop making SCVs. Suddenly your money goes through the roof because you've always had this $2,800 income, but now you have a $2,800 income and you're not spending any of it on workers and you're not spending any of it on depots. And you're like, wow, I really needed those 12 buildings that I needed. Anyway, so if you'd kept your money lower, you would have maxed out at 1450. Your income this game was spectacular, and you got enough money off of those two bases to really max out at 1450, 1420, 1430, something like that. I would have liked to see your third a little bit earlier, but this is great. On the income side of things are good. On the spending side of things are terrible. You ended up with about a third the number of buildings that you wanted. And on the using your unit side, this is terrible. You're seeding the middle of the map. First of all, you've got 200 unit space and you're not attacking. Like look at what you guys had when you max out. Right around here. This is when you should be going, around 180 unit space. You're capped out. Your army is bigger than his. You've got 180 U to his 140. He's just trying to get his third down now. If you were attacking, you win. And what can happen is you scan the middle and you say, well, I don't want to walk into the middle. He's got tanks already there. He's got the watchtower. Fine, go around. So if there's two ways to do this. I like to do the aggressive way, where you take every single unit you have and you walk around. And if he chooses to base trade, then you win, because your army was bigger. So in a base trade, whoever has the bigger army wins. There's the second way to do it, which is more pussyfooting around, like I don't want to lose. So that way would be to put a siege tank here, 3 or 4 bunkers here, a siege tank here, bunker here, siege tank here, and then go with everything else and try to walk around his army and engage. The problem with the pussyfooting around method is that if you meet his army, like if he sees you trying to go around and he walks over and intercepts you, now it's like 2/3 of your army versus his whole army. If he's balls to the wallsing and you're pussyfooting around, then that can be bad. That can go badly. But It looks like you are. No, you're not gonna engage. So I don't like this. You kind of gave up the lead that you got. Like, having a bigger income and a bigger army spending than your opponent only matters if you fight often enough so that you never cap out. Because if you both cap out, then now you're on even footing, even though you did better than him. You got to take advantage of the fact that you're better than 95% of the people you play against. I've never seen a replay from you in which you didn't have more workers than your opponent. So you got to use that to win games. You can't just be better and then get to 200 unit space and be like, all right, now we're on even footing. This is crazy. Also, you're doing the same thing. This is what I've seen from you like 5 TvTs in a row now. You cap out, you take some sort of siege tank position, and then you do a drop. I don't like that at all. Because this siege tank position isn't threatening him, right? What you want to do is use your entire army and push into him. You could probably just A-move in and win against his army. But even if you can't, if you A-move in and you think you can't win and you siege up and then you fall back a little bit, now your siege line has provoked him to keep his entire army here looking at it, because your siege line is right next to his siege line. You both just lost units. You're both setting your rally points up to the front. You're both pulling all the units you can to make sure you can win that fight. And that's when you siege up and do the drop, you know? Because that's when his attention is entirely focused on the middle. If you do this defensive siege line where he's not threatened at all by your siege line, there's no possibility that either of you is going to fight anytime soon, and then you do a drop, it's as if you're just doing a drop while your units were sitting at home. It doesn't make any sense. Because he's not out of position. Also, you walked into that turret wall and lost your medevac and 8 Marines, but dropping without pushing the front is a time buying maneuver. This is I'm going to do something so that I can gain additional time to make more units, and you've been maxed out since 16 minutes. Anything you do that is not a full frontal attack right now is a bad thing, because everything else is just buying time, and buying time is bad for you because eventually he ends up with a bigger army than you. Because again, your big advantage in this game is that you have 80 workers and he has 54. You got your third earlier than him. You had a bigger income than him. But that becomes a disadvantage as soon as you both cap out. So now that's actually a huge disadvantage. His army is much bigger than yours when you're both capped out. His composition is, it looks like, worse than yours. But 120 Marines against 70 Marines, that all just comes from the fact that he doesn't have any workers. And also, he's doing what people do when they max out. He's taking 1 million bases, throwing down 1 million racks, having a huge infrastructure, having a giant turret ring, and getting a giant income. And you're not. You capped out on 3 bases and you just sat there. You're like, okay, I've got 3 bases now. Yay! Your money is up at 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. Having more money than him at this point is not good. It's not that should not be your goal. So now he walks into you, crushes one side of your attack. This is the kind of stuff you should have been doing when you wanted to engage, when you were ahead of him. Siege lines are always weak on the sides because only 1 or 2 siege tanks can reach. So now he trades his Marines for your stuff. You guys both lost the same amount. That was a relatively even trade. And the question becomes, which one of you gets back to this reasonable army size quicker? Right now you're ahead in army size because he attacked into you. And you're making BCs. That's great. I like that you're making BCs. Until they pop out, though, you're going to really need siege tanks on the ground. Because he's going to remax on Marines, and you're going to have BCs with no siege tanks, and that's going to be bad. Medevac, Raven, smattering of Marines, couple of siege tanks. You got to have this minimum number of siege tanks too. If you're gonna go BCs, you have to have this minimum number of siege tanks that makes sure that he can't use his Marines to kill your BCs. Also, armor is unreasonably important. When you're going ship plating is unreasonably important for BCs. You want to have been upgrading ship plating for like 4 or 5 minutes before you make your first BC, because 0 upgraded BCs are crap. They just get dominated by Marines. So there's no point in making BCs until you've spent 6 minutes getting ship armor level 2. And so you want to be making a big push, and then another big push, and then another big push while you're waiting for time to make up BCs. You don't want to just sit on 200 unit space for 10 minutes while you get ship plating and then make BCs. That's silly. So this whole game just comes down to a passivity fail. You contained yourself on 3 bases. There's no additional bases you can take, and your main is mined out and your natural is drawn out. You starved yourself to death. He didn't even ever siege tanks in the middle. He didn't ever try to prevent you from taking the middle. He just sat there with a smaller army than you had, unsieged, and you were like, well, I'll just protect my 3 bases then. And that's just so wrong. When you siege these tanks, you're declaring this land, and you're saying, alright, I'm going to push out and declare a huge swath of land. And you didn't. You pushed out and secured the 3 bases you already had. That's not securing anything. You gave him the whole map, and you took your little tiny corner, and you just like, I have a bigger army than you, therefore I will let you win the game. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So make a big push. Use your army. And if you trade evenly and your whole army dies, you want to be able to remax quicker than him because you have more money than him. Trading armies is a good thing when you have more money. You're the guy who wants to be losing his army and making a new one. He's the guy who wants to grab a powerful siege position and hold it because he has no money. You have tons of money. So this was bad. You had great macro and terrible aggression. Terrible aggression. And these CCs are ridiculously late. You're already mined out on your main. You're already partially mined out on your natural. You've got 80 SCVs, which requires 4 bases to be useful, and you're only mining off 1 base. And that just comes from the fact that you contained yourself. You were like, you know what, I only need 3 bases, and then you're going to throw down additional CCs, but there's nowhere to expand because you're letting him have the middle, and he's only holding the middle with 3 tanks. You still, at any moment, could just walk up there and take the middle away from him. You have enough. 3 tanks is not scary. 5 is the minimum. If it's not 5, it's not scary. That's the rule in TvT. So, if you attacked into the middle, you would take more losses than he would, but you have more money than he does, so it's okay to take more losses. And especially if you attack this from multiple sides, like there's multiple ramps you can approach from, and he only has vision of basically where this... What is this? Oh, he's only got vision like out to here, so you can walk a bunch of dudes down here, walk a bunch of dudes down here, and then go up the front with your tanks and go up both sides of the Marines. And he'll lose the middle. He's not strongly holding the middle, and you feel like he is. I can tell by the way you're playing. You're letting him continue because you think he has the middle and you think you can't get in there. But it's wrong. Scan it. Notice that there's only 3 tanks and say, I can kill that. Marines aren't defensive units. Having Marines on this high ground, that doesn't give him any advantage. Marines versus Marines is always going to be an even fight. So whoever has better upgrades or more Marines is going to win that fight, and you've got more money, so you should have more Marines. Yeah, dude. Ja avant cette cheese poof. So now he's pushing forward with his 3 tanks. He's got this massive pile of Marines, and you got BCs. But the BCs only have 1 armor upgrade, so they're not very good against Marines yet. When they get 3 armor upgrade, they're going to have 6 armor, and the Marines are going to do no damage. They're going to do 3 damage a shot instead of 9. That's like 1/3 damage. But until then, the BCs are kind of crap. What's the point in these Ravens? Is to defend against Vikings, like BC Raven to PDD against Vikings? Because he's not going Viking, just so you know. And that's a lot of gas for a man with a gas-starved build to be dumping into units that don't do anything. So now you're getting more and more BCs, and you're still kind of afraid of his ball. Walking over here to clean up the drop with BCs. You get to kill a ton of stuff with 0 losses because that's what BCs do. Back up. And now he's going to come kill your production infrastructure. This is a big vulnerability of keeping your production infrastructure in between your base and his, is that the killing blow in TvT is to kill your opponent's production infrastructure, because at a certain point you both have infinite money. So taking out the person's income doesn't hurt him anymore. Your main goal is not to kill the income, but to kill the infrastructure. So you're putting that infrastructure out in front, and you're saying, look, if you attack me, you win. So, I mean, it's okay to put some racks out front, but if you have the majority of your infrastructure in a position like that, you're going to lose the second he gets any minor advantage. So at this point, your BCs all died to Marines because they don't have enough armor upgrades. You're just starting ship armor level 2. Don't make BCs without +2 armor. Just don't do it at all. And siege tanks. BC siege tank is the combination. It's not just pure BC. Pure BC is crap, because there's nothing to prevent Marines from walking in and killing them. You want siege tanks underneath so that the Marines can't get close. And then you move forward with the BCs, back up into the siege tanks. All of his Marines die. You move forward with the siege tanks, move forward with the BCs, back up into the siege tanks. Also, he just has unreasonable numbers of bases. You're already starved to death. Like, this game is silly. It all just came down to you not knowing how to use your early advantage to win. You need to trade armies early and often. You need way more production facilities, and that's all you needed. Like, everything else you did was great. I don't know. I don't really want to watch the end. You lose. You're starving to death. You lose. So that's that, man.